Hi everyone, it's me, Krylios, Team Racing Productions MC and producer. And today joining me is Nate Ward 8 Derenge, who is joining me once again to talk about his campaign. Hello, Nate.
Hey, Krylios, good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. So glad that you could join me here once again. We chatted, earlier this year,
You did.
and here we are down to close to the end of the year again. So, for those of our viewers who don't know, give me a little bit about your background again, and what you're running for.
Yeah, gladly. Well, I moved to Anacostia about 5 years ago, and today I'm the Republican nominee for the Ward 8 representative on the DC Council. And so, yeah, I'm about opening up DC and giving Ward 8 some other options besides Trayon.
Of course, there we go. So let's talk about that a little bit because, when we spoke at the beginning of the year, the pandemic had we were just kind of, entering that. And now that we are, 7, 8 months in, how has this, affected your campaign thus far? And how has it, changed your priorities, for your campaign and if you are elected?
Concerning the campaign, my struggles have been the struggle of every other challenger. It's harder. It's harder to like have a rally or have a meetup. It's harder to have a debate just because there's gathering restrictions from our mayor, which have been super oppressive. Hopefully, and now I believe she made the state of emergency go through December, which will make it harder to do just like life as we used to know it. And so, yeah, the campaign's been tricky. I'm very happy that my website, which anyone can go to, you don't have to go out and gather, it's nateward8.com, has 18 different pages of fun, great information on my policies. And there's even a forecast. You can see who's going to get the most votes for my ward and for the state board of election thing, or that specific race. Got a lot of other neat pages with even some neat, yeah, there's neat info on nateward8.com. When it comes to whoever wins the election, I think the council will continue to be doing their Zoom meetings and legislating the way that they have been for the past 6 months. So I think government operations will still continue. And if Ward 8 chooses me, I will, yeah, I guess I'll be going to meetings virtually. But yeah, so post-election, we'll get through it. Hopefully, maybe something magical will happen after November 3rd, and like life will go back to normal. But yeah, concerning what life will be like post-election, we'll deal with it, with whatever the situation is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see that. I see that. No, it makes sense. Well, tell me about some of the deepest issues right now that that's facing Ward 8, some that may have been exacerbated by this ongoing pandemic, and the ones that you truly, truly want to tackle, if elected to the Council of the District of Columbia.
The biggest issue would be just reopening DC again. Talk to people on the streets who they had multiple jobs, and now they have 0 jobs. And getting DC open is the number one priority, in my personal opinion. Another opinion would be for schools to reopen. The data shows from DC there have been 0 deaths for people under the age of 19 from Corona. Out of the 628 people who have tragically died, and it's been attributed to Corona, yeah, 0 below the age of 19. So let's get schools open too. I think a lot of physicians support that idea, and it'll be good for the kids. Then parents can go back to work since they don't have to watch their kids at home. And that'll be one complication that folks in Ward 8 and all over the district will no longer have to deal with that once that happens. Some other priorities, I think, yeah, opening up DC, it's got to be the number one priority. And yeah, that's probably the biggest issue I have.
Okay. And so what would you say to critics who would say, maybe the reason why, out of the 698 deaths, none below 19 have died, and why the death rate has been relatively low compared to other municipalities in America? What would you say to those critics who say the only reason the way that it is like that is because of the lockdown? What would you say to those critics?
It's a great objection. We have data from 50 different states, a bunch of other developed countries that have had a bunch of different philosophies on how to approach the pandemic with mask mandates and gathering mandates. And when thankfully the data shows everywhere that young people are pretty safe. So my suggestion on getting kids back in school, which isn't exactly a DC Council decision, but my recommendation and my support would be get kids back in school, because that data is true everywhere. So I think kids are pretty safe. Unfortunately, the people most at risk, according to the DC data, is people above the age of 80. Over 200 of the 620 deaths have been from folks who are over 80. Another thing that I would talk to the critics about is DC is not reporting comorbidities. The CDC showed that only 6% of coronavirus deaths were due exclusively to coronavirus and didn't have other issues happening, other respiratory hypertension. It's been logged that people who die in like car accidents and will be recorded as a COVID death because hospitals get more money if they report a coronavirus death, which is a really unfortunate incentive from just the way our federal government tries to manage things. So I'd say continue to look at the data, look at different states, look at it nationally, and look at the consistencies. And I think that, of course, mask mandates are important in certain situations, but there's also places where it's not as important, like when you're outside, for example. Half-life is still 90 seconds when in direct sunlight for coronavirus. So you're pretty safe in some places. But yeah, I'm happy to talk about the data. I'm not a scientist, I'm an analyst, but you can go to my page, natewood8.com, on COVID-19 response. You can see that. And also importantly, after the human lives, that is the number one concern. Like there's been dozens of businesses that have shut down permanently because of how DC has reacted. There's also been plenty of businesses who DC has fined thousands of dollars because they didn't have their tables spaced out enough. And I think that's really tragic. We need our economy to get back going and just bring life back into the hospitality restaurant industry. And as council member, I'll be fighting for stuff like that.
Let's talk. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about deaths and when it comes to COVID. So not only looking at deaths, but there has been data that has come out. Not only data, but a lot of information that has come out that once someone has contracted the virus, it has shown that there could be long-term effects that will affect one forever. Whether it has to do with breathing, whether it has to do with cardiovascular, sometimes even brain, because COVID not only affects the lungs, but also brain and stuff like that. And so last week, DC was just about to hit the mark for the lowest ever new amount of cases per day, 17 on Monday. And then with the White House having a super spreader event, that has now changed things. What about those who look and say, okay, well, if DC in itself is doing particularly well with getting it down, but at the White House they were not adhering to those measures, and now they have a super spreader event on their hands? How would you balance this reopening so that what happened at the White House does not happen to the wider District of Columbia?
It's a great point. It's a good case study. There's probably been multiple events that could be super spreader events. There was the Rose Garden event in the White House where a bunch of White House staff, including our president, contracted the virus. But we had a few months ago, there's plenty of riots occurring, people gathered together, breathing heavily, doing destruction to different parts of our city. And besides those, there's other gatherings that occur. I go to the park, I see parties with young kids' birthday parties, which are good. I've attended church in a few places. that or congregants gather to worship the Lord.
Were they wearing masks?
In the place where I went now in Ward 8, some places do, some churches handle things differently. I have attended services in Ward 8 where there's proper spacing and masks. And yeah, happy First Amendment issue on freedom to assemble and for freedom from different government or religious orders. And so yeah, when it comes to super spreading events, I think it definitely deserves a good look at the data because they happen a lot, especially with the riots from a few months ago. And then I'd have to look and see if there were in fact spikes that did occur. I'd have to research it, and the balance that you're talking about is the big balance. It's not a question of like public safety versus personal freedom. Actually, that is the question. I'm biased towards personal freedom and handle your own risks, whereas I'd say our mayor and others are biased towards safety and making decisions for you instead of you handling your own risk and making your own decisions. So yeah, that's the conversation. That's the balance. It's fun to talk about, but yeah, let's look at evidence. Let's look at past events, and hopefully none of us like live our lives in too much fear. But yeah, let's take adequate precautions, and should be free to protect yourself with the mask. And yeah, and if you're going places where you could be a risk, wear your mask. Fascinating times we live in. I never thought I'd be like studying virology and looking at this stuff like a year ago, but so yeah, fascinating times.
Yeah, we all know much more about viruses than we did before now.
Yeah,
Definitely. Well, Nate, thanks so much for joining me today. Tell me, before I let you go, how can, our viewers support your campaign if they want to, and how can they follow and keep up with you?
All right. Well, I think my pride and joy of the week is nateward8.com. Got 18 different pages of nice resources about me and other fun things you can do. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, but my website's the best place to go. And if you want to support me, you can look at my info and spread my links to my pages and my research around, since I'm not accepting donations for this campaign. My competitor's taking public tax dollars, your tax dollars, and spending on his campaign, but I am walking around with a cardboard box showing people my website. So yeah, support me by checking out the website and yeah, spreading the links.
Thank you so much, Nate. And thanks so much for joining me today. Such a pleasure chatting with you. Best of luck on the election. Thanks so much.
You got it. Thanks, Krylios.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for watching. Bye, everyone.